Good evening, everyone. I'm Councillor Stuart Jeffrey, Leader of the Council, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this rather late starting meeting of the Cabinet. May I take this opportunity to advise you that if the fire alarm does sound, please remain seated. Members of the Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. Tonight's proceedings will be webcast by the Council, but if anyone else is intending to record these proceedings, can you please let me know now? I ask this question not to stop you, but to merely ensure that members of the public in the room know that this is taking place. Item 1, apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillor Summersgill. Everybody else seems to be here. Item 2, urgent items. There is one urgent update this evening, which provides a written copy of the pack. Have we got a written copy? Oh, it's coming, which is the written copy of the Policy Advisory Committee's recommendation concerning the draft Heathlands and Lidsing's supplementary planning documents, and Olivia is just fetching them off the printer. So I think I probably can't ask that to be, I can ask for the update to be agreed, but not the detail.
Yeah, you just it arrives. We have to read that.
Yeah.
Take it on board.
Okay. But you agree to take the document when it gets here? Yeah. No, is that agreed? I'm just yeah, absolutely. Brilliant, thank you. It's all moving a bit fast, isn't it? Item 3, are there any visiting members? Councillor Houlihan and Councillor Jones, are you, and Povey, are you visiting members or are you in watching? Watching, okay. Item 4, disclosures by members and officers. Are there any disclosures by members and officers? Nope. 5, disclosures of lobbying. Are there disclosures of lobbying? No. Item 6. Sorry. Yes, Stephen.
For the avoidance of doubt, as Boxley Parish Chair, I certainly have been sending items on the Lidsing item to officers in that regard on behalf of residents and Boxley Parish Council.
I'm taking that you are saying you have been lobbied by them. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Item 6, shall we consider items taken in private? I move that all items be taken in public. Is that agreed? Item 7, minutes of the meeting on the 17th of September. I move that those minutes are approved as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Item 8, questions from local residents. There are no questions from local residents. Item 9, questions from members to the leader or individual members. There are 2 questions from members, according to my list. Is that correct? Have we got questions from members to the Cabinet? No, there aren't. Okay. Right. Item 10. So there are no questions from members. Item 10, Cabinet matters referred to the Cabinet by another committee. There are none. Item 11, issues arising from overview and scrutiny. There are none. Item 12, matters referred to the Cabinet by any other committee. There are none. Item 13, any matter relating to serious service failure or nuisance. There are none. Item 14, receipt of written representations from members of the Council. There are none. Item 15 is the forward plan, pages 8 to 18. Do members have any comments on the forward plan? I see no comments. I move that the forward plan be noted. Is that noted? Yeah, thank you, Councillor English. Item 16, presentations of petitions. There is one petition this evening, which will be presented by Kate Hammond on behalf of Save Our Lenham Heath Action Group. Kate, if you'd like to take a seat, and you have 5 minutes to present your petition.
Good evening, councillors. Tonight I present to you our petition titled Stop the Lenham Heathlands New Town. This petition has been signed by over 1,588 people, a clear signal that our community is deeply concerned. We are calling for the consultation on the draft SPD to be postponed until 4 key conditions are met. 1, a full transport assessment must be completed. 2, clarity from government on a new railway station must be secured. 3, a costed infrastructure delivery plan must be published. And 4, there must be meaningful engagement with Lenham Parish Council and SOL. Now, the Leader of the Council keeps saying this draft SPD was prepared with Lenham Parish Council and SOL. Let's set the record straight. SOL was blocked from joining the stakeholder steering group. Lenham Parish Council pulled out after their feedback and requests were repeatedly dismissed. That is not collaboration, that is exclusion. This administration has failed Lenham and surrounding villages. The Leader promised a proper, thorough SPD. He has not delivered. He has failed to keep his word. And as the SPD has developed over the last 9 months, it has become increasingly clear there are significant hurdles to deliverability, viability, sustainability that simply cannot be squared. We maintain they are unlikely ever to be resolved. Worse still, this draft SPD is not compliant with the inspector's final report and recommendations. The inspector asked for a detailed transport assessment. It hasn't been done. It's been kicked down the road. He asked for a private wastewater treatment works to be included in the delivery plan. This has not been done either. He wanted reassurance that development would avoid the River Stour to protect local ecology. That's missing too. He asked for a mapped out delivery plan showing key infrastructure interdependencies. Still not done. This draft SPD is incomplete. It is not fit for purpose. It should not be put for consultation until the work is done properly. Let's be honest, this SPD process is a farce. You know it, we know it. Some of you have even admitted it's just a tick boxing exercise. Members have caved to officer pressure just to get anything published. So I ask you, who is running this council? As a community, we feel deeply let down. The recent by-election result reflects that this is something that should be firmly on your mind. So tonight we urge you, do not proceed with this consultation. Take a pause, do the proper work required to prepare an evidence-led SPD document that has teeth to hold this monstrosity of a development to account. Respect the inspector's recommendation, respect the community, and above all, respect the truth. After all, you have committed to residents of making sure it is the best possible scheme that will inflict least harm on existing communities and local countryside. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Hammond. Okay. We'll be moving then on to item 17, which is the Heathlands supplementary planning document. Obviously, we have just had sat through the pack in terms of discussion. It's obviously worth just very briefly reiterating the timetables and process. The local plan review was passed in March 24 last year. The administration, those of us on the council at the time, I think, all voted against it. We know that it can't be undone, and that allocation is there. The SPD is our opportunity to shape elements of the development. We have heard from the debate earlier this evening that the 50% green space that is allocated within the SPD is unusual and very welcome. We obviously have set up the steering group, which has met monthly. We have had the engagement. The steering group was asked to comment on drafts, particularly during the summer, and comments were received, although not from all parties. Yeah, I think there's some comments from the pack earlier. So the discussion was predominantly around whether or not we should have a 6-week consultation or a 4-week consultation, and the recommendation from the pack was that we go with 6 weeks. And there were some minor layout editorial amendments that were suggested as well, but officers obviously can do those minor tweaks to make sure it reads correctly. So I'll, unless William or Karen, you want to say any more, I'll pass it over for comment. Councillor English.
I think we have to call a spade a shovel, or whatever. If the SPD were postponed, actually what we're talking about is cancelled, not having. It isn't a perfect document. It can hopefully still be improved during the consultation process. That's one of the points of having consultation processes. However, imperfect is probably better than nothing at all. I think we will have to be aware of resting too much on what the inspector's precise specifications were, because we all know what happened when previous inspectors said that developments along the southern corridor in Maidstone were dependent on Kent County Council building certain road improvements and putting those junction improvements and other things in place. And then Kent County Council has blatantly refused to do any of that. The result has not been planning applications have been turned down because of that inspector's report, quite the reverse. Planning inspectorate has said, oh, well, doesn't matter. So we have to be very, very careful about assuming that because the inspector's report prescribes certain things, that the absence of those will automatically mean that we don't have the development, because that's not what's going to happen. Government inspectors have been pretty much told to approve almost everything on the assumption that at some point the infrastructure may be conceivably delivered. And to be honest, this government doesn't really care very much about whether the infrastructure is delivered or not. It just cares about how many planning applications are approved and how many units are built. So we have to be very, very careful about making rash assumptions. It's a shame, it's a pity, it's a scandal and a disgrace, pretty much, but we are where we are, and pretending otherwise will not get us very far. So I think we have to go with the recommendation of the pack.
Thank you, Councillor English. Just in terms of that comment, I went through the recommendations from the inspector. I feel they've all been met, but I mean, clearly that's a judgment rather than necessarily certainty, because there are degrees of met, I guess.
I was just saying that even if they hadn't been, depending on them to prevent the development would be rash. Absolutely,
and clearly, if the calls to delay are in actual fact calls to not do it, we just hand over the site to developers to do whatever they want with, and that would be utterly disastrous for the people in that ward, and not something that I would counsel as. Councillor Harwood, you indicated.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I actually think that we, within the constraints that exist around supplementary planning documents that can not create policy or add significant additional cost, I think we have come up with what I think is a really visionary and quite progressive document. I've actually read through the thing word for line by line, word by word, more than once, and as colleagues are aware, put in lots of track changes and so on that came in there, and some of that detail wording, which is going through to a consultation document where stakeholders and local residents will be able to make their observations and suggest further changes, is actually a really good starting point. And this process is going on regardless of the SPD. If we get the SPD over the line, it becomes a material planning consideration, and it does add significantly to the quality and the safeguards. And I think that, frankly, we inherited the local plan review as it was, and I think we have done everything we possibly can to mitigate the impact that will inevitably result from such a large development. But that said, I think actually it's a damn good document. So I am prepared to move that we do approve. I mean, option one is my favourite to hit the deadlines, but I will kind of defer to you as chair if you think that any additional tweaks need to be made. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Yeah, I mean, I think the steer from the pack was quite clear that they were keen on option 2 for 6 weeks. And personally, it kind of feels right to do that. But Councillor Thompson, I couldn't remember your surname for a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not least because I'm sure we have an audience outside this room today, and quite properly so. I would like to revisit a couple of points from the pack that has just taken place. In my current position now, not only as member of this cabinet, but also as ward councillor in one of the 3 areas, 2 of which have now come to the SPD situation. It has been a epic, more of the tragic than comic variety during the time that I've been associated with this council, firstly as a candidate, then as an opposition member, and now sitting here at the cabinet table. And I am still in the process, learning quickly as I have, of discovering more and more things every meeting that I go to, discovering nuances in this process. It is no surprise that folk in Lenham and elsewhere are extremely frustrated at this stage. And there is a particular point of the debate that has just taken place that I do think it's appropriate to focus on. The assertions have been made that there has been timely sharing of data, of drafts, of the information that has gone into the production of this SPD. And it's also been put that there has been ample opportunity to respond by all the stakeholder parties. As I observed, the process that might have taken, say, 2 years to take place has been concertinaed into something like a quarter of that period. That is not a process that any of us set out deliberately to organise. So we might debate whether or not things have been shared as timely, or that the opportunity to respond has been as ample as we would have wished. But life is the art of the possible. And the point that I think that I would want to bring at this point, and Councillor Harwood has already raised this issue in terms of the tweaks that we might make at this stage, is to make sure to the best of our ability that there is, in this short public consultation period that we are now envisaging, still the opportunity for timely sharing of information and the ample response by us to the information, the opinion that is gained through that process. I have to say it is extremely encouraging to see that the 3 new councillors representing that area have made efforts to be in person in the room this evening. That gives some hope that this could be achieved in the case of Heathlands, and I'm certainly happy to share the experience that I have had in dealing with the Lidsing situation with them, and we've had that conversation in principle already. As I said, I haven't been through this process before. I know there are some people here who have. We had an extremely gainful conversation with officers just a few days ago where we explored some of the details of these things. And as colleagues here know, I'm much more optimistic about that. For example, we found out that engagement with national authorities could be begun during the consultation period, not necessarily waiting until afterwards. That was a helpful discovery. So if we are able today and immediately following to maximise those opportunities to gain the best benefit out of this process, because the really important thing is the quality of the document that we end up with, not so much the quality of the document as it is being published at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hart, are you happy to propose option 2, the 6-week one? I'm happy
I
to
would
take
like
that.
to take officer advice on that if I could, because I am concerned that if we miss the boat, we don't have a supplementary planning document to shape the outline planning application. And perhaps I don't want really to break rank between Lenham Heathlands and Lidson, because Lidson, where time is even more pressing in terms of we know and expect an outline planning application to be received. We just need to be careful. So I would like officer advice, frankly. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no, happy. And that was the nature of the discussion. Much of the discussion was that risk versus engagement. Karen, do you want to comment on that?
Throw my papers on the floor. Yes, in terms of the timings, thank you. I mentioned in the PAC meeting, but just to reiterate for those that weren't there, the statutory minimum requirement is that we consult for 4 weeks. Normally we would consult for 6 weeks just to provide extra chance for people to comment. That's a pretty average timescale for this kind of document. The issue will be the analysis time afterwards, because if we consult for 4 weeks, then there is a high chance that we will get back to a January committee to adopt it, to be able to go through that analysis. If we go for 6 weeks, there's more chance that that might go into February. And as you mentioned, there is a potential that we might have a planning application coming through either later this year for Lidsing in particular, or early next year for them. That's something that they have mentioned that they're likely to do. So we don't have that obviously guaranteed, but the sooner we get out, the better. Because that will help, that will give some weight. Obviously, the more weight will be when it's adopted, but there will be some weight because you've actually got it out there in the public domain, so it's a public thing. So that can be taken into consideration. Something we discussed in the PAC meeting earlier is that we can start doing the analysis on the Lidsing document first and then the Heathlands one second, so we can focus on the Lidsing one to try and get that through quicker. But obviously we don't know how many comments are going to come back or how detailed they may be for us to analyse either. And we may have to go out to external bodies, people like Highways Agency and so on, to get their views on certain content that they might come back with. So there's a lot of ifs and buts, really, but that might help you just to get a feel for things. In terms of, obviously, if they do come back in with a planning application in December or even January, the document will be out there. It may not be adopted in either case with 4 weeks or 6 weeks, but it may take time to actually get that application through. And they might not have all the relevant documents with their application, for example. So it can take time before it's actually validated as well as a document. So there's a lot of unknowns.
Yeah, so on that issue, from all of the discussions that I've had with the range of officers throughout this process, that there was a reason, I think, why 4 weeks was being proposed, and I think that the risks are too high to my mind. I think 4 weeks, is enough time to get those responses in, and enough time to deal with it and deal with the imminence of the planning applications. I'm very concerned about lengthening that process, particularly because of the statutory consultees, and we know, we've got Christmas coming and so on. It will make life, potentially quite difficult if we do have those delays. So I think that's a long way of saying that I think my gut feeling is option one is safest.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. We can always cancel Christmas. Are there any other views on 4 weeks versus 6 weeks from the Cabinet? Councillor English.
One shouldn't assume that one determines an application on the day it's submitted for validation. I mean, it does normally take a while. I wouldn't expect a planning application to necessarily go to the first available planning committee after it's been submitted. So I think we may actually be panicking unnecessarily, but there we go. And I also think that it does suggest to me why bother having the PAC meeting.
I assume that you prefer the 6. I'll look to some of the planners, but my understanding is that the date of submission is the point at which the weight is given to the document. So if the document isn't passed, it has less weight when the planning application goes in. Yeah, people are nodding. Yeah. Okay. Did you indicate then, Councillor Thompson?
So again, to reiterate, I'm feeling my way in this process. So I'm doing my best to contribute in good conscience and in good faith on the basis of everything that I've been told. The promoter has put to us in the case at Lidsing that an application is expected by the end of this year. It has never been the view of this council that the SPD would be completed by the end of this year, to my knowledge. It is a criticism beyond this council that the promoters hold the whip hand in the process. If we are to hold our heads up and carry out our duties with due professionalism as councillors and representing our officers, I don't think that we should be dancing to that tune. We should do a good job. We should do a good job by our residents. We should do a good job in public. We should hold our heads up and say we're going to be responsible in bringing about this process in the best possible way. If that means that we need to give 2 more weeks to the process, then so be it. If the application is coming too soon for us to respond to it, in any case, that is not our responsibility. I do not feel it is my responsibility. I think that the residents will say you should be doing a good job in overseeing the production of a good SPD. And if it turns out that you've been undermined by forces beyond your control, I'm prepared to live with that.
Thank you. So, Councillor Harwood, you're proposing option 1, the 4 weeks. Is anyone prepared to second that option? Can't see anyone prepared to second it. So would somebody like to then propose option 2, the 6 weeks? Councillor English has done that. I'm happy to second that from the chair. So we have a proposal which is seconded on option 2 for the 6 weeks version. Can I see a show of hands of those in favour? Option 2, and those against, and those abstaining. Thank you. 1 abstention. Good. Okay. Let's move on then to the next one, Lidsing, which we've kind of covered off a bit already. I'm not going to do the same introduction. Okay, so Lidsing, again, the same recommendation came forward from the PAC in terms of 6 weeks. And obviously debate we've had just now is around the risks on Lidsing more than Heathlands. Does anybody want to say anything else on Lidsing? Councillor Thompson.
I would like to again ask officers, Councillor Harwood, I think, was right to do so, and it's entirely appropriate to reinforce their view one way or the other, given the conversation that we have just had, so that it is transparent that we've taken a fully advised decision. Thank you.
I think it's the same. It's the same advice, Councillor Thompson, that it's very much up to yourselves as to which one you think is the most suitable. But I would advise you to do the same length of time as well in terms of process. I think it makes sense to do the same length of time, whichever that is, whether it's 4 or 6, just for parity between the two as well for the process, but all of the same applies for this.
Thank you, Karen. Councillor English.
On the grounds the officer advice on consistency, that sort of answers the immediate question I had as to whether one could treat the two cases differently, and the advice is clearly not. So having made the one decision, whether one agrees with it or not, it appears that we perforce must make the same decision on Lidsing. So I propose that recommendation. That's from the pack.
Thank you. So that's option 2 proposed. I'm happy to second it, although I think Councillor Thompson may have just seconded it in front of me. So Councillor Thompson seconded that. Are there any other comments or Cabinet wants to make? Councillor Harwood?
I think just to make an observation that just the process of getting to where we are with the draft supplementary planning document for Lidsing has seen some really worthwhile negotiation with the promoter to further improve the scheme over that was agreed within the local plan review. And I think actually some of the safeguards around landscape and ecology have been really quite kind of fundamental to ensuring that a development of this size can work so close to a protected landscape, the Kent Downs National Landscape, and so close to existing residential communities. I would also state that there has been some really good joint working with our colleagues in the Medway towns, because it's fair to say that the main burden on critical infrastructure would actually be within the Medway Council area, and the engagement that we've had with Medway has, frankly, been better in some ways than with our own highway authority, let's say, and others. So I do actually think again that this is a document that I am happy for it to go out to consultation. I do, however, and I need to say it, I do have concerns about slowing the process, because we know how quickly the planning application is coming in. It makes no difference to the promoter whether we have the SPD in place or not. I would much rather all this hard work did shape the application as it went through the planning process. So I do have some worries about what is the effective difference between 4 and 6 weeks in terms of the consultation and gaining responses, but there is a big difference in 2 weeks in terms of tackling the responses and dealing with the statutory consultees, which does worry me.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, those comments are well noted. And as I said, Christmas is cancelled for those 3. So they're going to have to work through all of Christmas Day at least. And just on the highways point, I made the point in the pack. I think that one of the key bits is that east-west link, and I'm really keen to hear from residents on their thoughts on that in particular, and the link into the motorway and so forth. Councillor Thompson, final point maybe?
I very much hope so, Mr. Chairman. In my invitation to officers earlier, I might have hoped for some response on the point I made earlier about actually the practice of the review process, and that how that is done transparently. That clearly will require some time. It requires a model. Will it be the stakeholder steering group in the same model that we have seen it already? And what time might be indicated for that? I think at this point, I completely take on board the concerns that Councillor Harwood has, and quite properly so, and nothing that I've said is to reduce the weight of that at all. But we haven't explored how long the process would be after the 6-week consultation, and I think that is absolutely crucial to the nature of our decision that we make.
I think we have gone through that. I think Karen was quite clear around the process and how and the need to work through the responses, make amendments. I think the one point that I didn't hear in terms of explanation was the role of the steering group. The steering group is still formed and will be engaged in that final bit before it comes back to cabinet, OPAC and cabinet. Okay, we've got a proposal. It's been seconded in terms of option 2. I can't see anyone else indicating, so should we therefore vote on that? All those in favour of option 2? Excellent. That's 5, 6. And those against and abstentions. So 1 abstention. Thank you, councillors. I now declare this meeting closed.